Hello and welcome to the Death Camera podcast. My name's Sean and joining me as always is the one and only Dante Boffman. Mr. Boffman, man, how are you?
I'm good, Sean. How are you?
I'm splendid. Well, what do you want to do for small talk to start the episode?
Is this the first time that we've never done small talk?
Yeah, usually there's always some tea or some weather or some event or some protest or...
Well, I did actually get a comment from my dear friend and housemate, Jay Judd, about the tea chat last week, saying that she loved it.
Oh, nice. So is she a French Earl Grey?
I don't know if she has a preference. I think she's a bit cosmopolitan with her tea, you know, like live and let live.
I've actually got, I got some, so like I only really got into tea, like, there you go, this is perfect small talk. I only got into tea in like the last 12 months, but that was long enough for two members of my friends and family to cop out and get me tea for Christmas, which is, you know, it's worse than undies, I reckon, because like, if I want tea, albeit tea too, I don't want tea for Christmas.
Yeah.
So like I got into tea like 2 months before Christmas, and then
yeah,
it was just
rough
out
timing.
two people. Which does that make me a bad person? Like
No, I don't think so. But it's interesting that you mentioned undies, because my grandma, God bless her, she messaged me saying like, "What can I get you for Christmas? Like, what do you want?" And I was like, "Literally, just get me undies," because I get like undies, socks, like every Christmas. Like I'll get someone will buy me like
I get socks every Christmas.
Someone will buy me like a fun pair of socks. Like I love dinosaurs, like a dinosaurs on them all, or like I got like these fun Star Wars socks, you know, stuff like that. And that gets me through like every single year. Get a couple pairs of undies, no problems, replenish the stock. And then a couple months ago, I bought my own undies. You know how fucking expensive Bond's undies are?
I actually can't tell you because I always get them given to me.
Cost me an arm and a leg. So my grandma messaged and she was like, "What can I get you?" And I was like, "Underwear, please." Like that is like, get me some undies stat.
Yeah. Well, actually, mum said, "Sean, you got a gift coming in the mail." I'm like, "Oh, awesome! Like, you know, lockdown gifts. This is so cool." Like, blah blah. And she's like, "Oh, really? Don't get your hopes up." And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, it's a gift?" It was undies, and like my hopes were up, and my hopes were just hit because they're expensive. Because I did actually buy undies a little while ago. Because my girlfriend said you should probably have bought your own undies, like you're fucking 23, and I'm like, I'm cozy. This is one thing I don't need to check off in the adulthood, but I bought Star Wars and Marvel undies.
Yeah, you gotta do something fun with it.
Yeah.
I used to have these like white, like, you know, briefs, like these really tight briefs, very very figure hugging from my dad. But on the back, they had a velociraptor in a top hat with a monocle. And I was like, that's hectic. Yeah, nice. That's fun.
Nice.
I'm walking away from you. You're looking at my bum, looking at the velociraptor.
Yeah. Classic Dante. Classic D-Uns. But yeah, D-Uns, what are we talking about in this episode?
Well, funny that you asked, Sean. No, so we're doing our over-under predictions for the upcoming season, which is only like 11 days away from tip-off, which is that's a pretty wild thing to consider. So we're doing our over-under predictions for the Eastern Conference, also known as the Ryerson Conference. So we're going to go by division, and we're going to start way up top in the Atlantic Division. So let's just kick it off with potential title favourite, the Brooklyn Nets. Their over-under is set at 55.5 wins, which would have them squarely in the playoffs. Are you going over or under?
I think this one for our 2021-22 over-under predictions brought to you by MeUndies. I think this is a clear over. 55.5 is a lot of wins, but I think this team could just sleepwalk to 50. And like this is assuming Kyrie gets vaccinated, or even if he doesn't, because if you take away one of their three-headed like monster of just absolute elite scorers, they've got like Kevin Durant, James Harden, and then Patty Mills just steps up to play whatever guard position for whenever one of those guards gets injured. So I think this is needed.
Javon Carter as well.
Javon Carter, and like even,
I was being facetious.
Seriously, man, like even that, like if it's James Harden with Javon Carter next to him, like
don't worry about it.
That makes Javon Carter look a lot better than next to Chris Paul, let's say, for example.
Yeah. No, I'm also going over. I'm smashing the over. This is probably my hardest over smash. This team could get 65 wins and it wouldn't be an upset for them to be that good. And I just kind of feel like surely their like injury bad luck has like played out. They've had so many injuries, like, you know, they obviously signed KD when he was like, you know, they knew he was going to be out for the year, but between Kyrie and Harden and KD last year, how many games did they miss? How often did they have them all together? Like, very rarely. Obviously, we saw what happened in the playoffs where it ended up being just KD. I think that there's just on like the balance of probability, it's unlikely that they have as injury ravaged a season as they previously did. And they were one game behind the top seed in the East. They won like 50 games in a shortened season. So
Kevin Durant's good at basketball there.
Kevin Durant's pretty good at basketball. So they won 50 games out of 72. So 55 or 56 out of 82 with, like a healthy season from everyone. So I'm going hard over on this one.
And just one more thing on that. They've also just got like a lot of veteran depth, and like we're going to talk about the Lakers next week, but like just having dudes like Melo for the Lakers, but then just having guys like LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, Paul Millsap, like they're not going to blow the world away, but like all of a sudden you might have like 20 and 4 from Blake Griffin. You're like, the Blake Griffin game against OKC, and it's like fucking
the Blake Griffin game. Nice. Who is he? Kelly Olynyk.
The next team on our 2021-22 over-under predictions brought to you by MeUndies is the Philadelphia 76ers. Their number set at 51.5 wins, and just like when we were doing the off-season grades, you gave them an ungraded and I gave them a C just because it's like, how the fuck do you grade this team? How do you pick if they're going to win games when Ben Simmons, even if he's employed by the team, isn't going to rock up, and then like we can go through all the money that he's going to lose. But even like, how do you know what the hell's going to happen? What have you done here?
I've hit the under, and I think I'm not hitting the under hard as in like I believe they're going to go way under, but I'm hitting it hard as in I believe they will go under, because if the situation plays out as it looks like it's going to now, which is where literally 11 days out from the season starting and Simmons is saying that he's going to sit out if he's not traded, that means you're playing, if not all, then at least a substantial chunk of the season without your second best player. Someone who made the All-NBA team, was second in Defensive Player of the Year voting. I think that they have enough depth and they have enough, with Embiid and Todd Harris, they can kind of like cobble together like a good offense, and they've obviously got some really great defenses, but they're really great defensive players. But you just can't take your second best player completely out of the lineup, not replace him in any way whatsoever, and thrive, let alone kind of like maintain. So I think there's a couple of teams below them that will look to be a bit more, to build on the success of last year, or in the case of someone like a Miami, like maybe even, additions of Kyle Lowry, like, step forward. And I think these guys seem like the reasonable team to drop out of that, like, kind of top four.
Yeah, they're the first one you'll let go to bring up in Indiana or something.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're comfortably, just with the amount of doubt around the team, like, they would comfortably be the first one to drop out of that, like, top, the upper echelon.
Yeah. And like, I think, like 51.5, if you've just got this team with Joel Embiid and like all the shooters they have, I think they probably push for 50 wins. I think like that's a 50 win plus team, but just the whole negativity of the whole vibe. And then I think if they do trade Ben Simmons for, like we said last week, a CJ McCollum level of player, I think that's more than a 50 win team as well. It's just like, I'm not going to pick it, because what if they get CJ halfway through the season? And we saw like how much chemistry matters with like the Boston Celtics this past season, and like Brooklyn Nets the season. Oh no, do they have big chemistry issue? Just, you've seen all these issues where it's like chemistry really matters. And like Embiid has had impeccable health for the past couple of seasons, and like, I'm going to pick the under, and 1% of that under is what if Embiid just is injured again? Because I think
even 10% of the under is what if Embiid, because like you stack those 10% of like what ifs, and all of a sudden you're at 40%, and it's like that's a pretty big like chance that they're going to maybe not completely implode, but
a what if being 0% they make 50 wins.
Yeah,
exactly. All right, so we're going to move on to the next team, which is the Boston Celtics, and I think this is one of the most interesting lines in the whole Eastern Conference. So the Celtics are at 46.5, which would have them in the playoffs. What say you?
I've gone over. I think this is a bounce back year for a team that was just decimated by chemistry, injuries, Kemba Walker being worse than Terry Rozier. And like, yeah, you can say what you want about Dennis Schroeder. You can say what you want about like a 50-year-old Al Horford and his wife. But like, I'm assuming Al Horford and Grant Williams are just going to be better than who the fuck was that center last year? Like Enes the Penis Kanter.
Yeah, well, he's still there.
And
he's
half of and half of the Time Lord, and then like, you know, there's point guard issues because
Tristan Thompson as well.
Tristan Thompson, yeah. And as soon as you just don't have a point guard, and it's Marcus Smart, and like you never want him to be your point guard, and also just the fact that like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are still growing, they're still becoming the players that they will be. And my final thing that's pushed me over here is that Marcus Smart and Time Lord bundles together beautifully for a max salary. So there is at least 1% here of my over that is maybe they traded for Bradley Beal or something.
Bradley Beal would be nice on this team. That, you know.
What have you done?
I've gone over as well.
You sound hesitant.
I think this is one of the ones where I'm like on the fence about it, because it sounds really good. What you just said, like, don't have a point guard last year, like now you do. Like, didn't have centers last year, now you do. But the point guard solution is it's Dennis Schroeder, who, looking at him next to his number, 5.9 million, you're like, yeah, he's 100% worth 5.9 million. But how many starting point guards are there in the league that are good, that are playing on 5.9 million? Not very many, because good starting point guards get paid 20 million plus. So we saw his struggles with the Lakers last year. It's possible that his success in OKC, you know, as part of that three-headed guard lineup with Chris Paul and SGA was system or support or whatever, and that it was an aberration. If that's the case, the point guard issue is not solved, because he's not, you know, appreciably better than like an old injured Kemba Walker. And then what's the solution at the 5? It's Al Horford. He's come back for his, you know, second tour of duty. And yes, he was...
You know you've gone over, man. You don't have to talk yourself
Hold on, I'm bringing it back around. Yes, he was good enough in OKC last year that they shut him down and said, like, Al, we don't need you to help us win any more games. But I think those two spots are, you know, like, reasons for hesitancy.
I think Time Lord could be like a clinker peloton.
Well, I mean, Time Lord's just got paid as well, so that's an indication of like you're going to be our you know, our 5 of the future. I think what's pushed me over is just like you said, like, you know, the Jays are going to get better. They've added Josh Richardson, who, you know, believe in at your own peril at this point. But I think for me, it's like, you know, Jaylen Brown wasn't completely healthy last year. He missed a large chunk of the second half of the season when they tanked. So get those two dudes on the wing, lock it in, metronomic, you know exactly what you're going to get, and just cobble together some play from the role players, and hope that Ime Udoka is a good coach, because I think that will be something that can either push them up or kind of like stop them from actually achieving their potential.
I am not going to talk myself into Josh Richardson for the
you
can't.
Here,
yeah, but you can't. Like, you know, I mean,
Josh Richardson running on 2016 fumes at this point. Like,
yeah,
he's still got the gas in the tank from 2016.
Yeah, and like, I'm not saying he's dead in the water, but like, they also extended him. I don't know why they extended him. That was a little bit of a questionable move, but yeah, it's I really like Robert Williams, and I think this could be a huge season for Robert Williams. And if he doesn't like take this opportunity now, like this is his break. Like, this is his thing to become, like I said, a Clint Capella, or just become a starting center in the league. Like, you just have to beat old man Al Horford, who is probably more than happy coming off the bench. But yeah, I'm just really big on this team. This could be a top 4 seed. Like, especially when a 4 seed last year was the fucking Knicks, who we're going to talk about next. Like, I think this is definitely a 4 seed.
Well, and if what happens is true and Philly kind of like soft implodes and falls out of the top 4, that's a spot up for grabs, and you'd be looking at like Atlanta, Miami, New York, Boston in there to try and like jump up. Like, there's going to be a lot of competition for those spots. So I think you have to be like good. Like, you won't be able to fall ass backwards into it. You have to like earn that 4th spot. But yeah, I think ultimately, like, I'm a bit kind of on the fence. Like, I wrestled with this one a little bit, but I'm confident in the over, because there's not many teams in the East that have players that are as obviously...
Now we're podcasting.
Name a better sound, I dare you.
There's not many teams that can stack two players that are better than those two dudes. Just surround Jalen and Jason with some good role players and like watch them work, because
I think they've done that. Like Marcus Smart and Robert Williams next to your two scorers that can also defend. That's beautiful.
The roster construction makes
chef kiss. I'm Italian.
Yeah, the roster construction makes sense. All right. Well, if we're in agreement, should we move on to?
So we haven't actually disagreed yet. Which is nice. I also just want to say, just because I fucking love the spotlight. I've gone with 15 overs and 15 unders. This is the first time I've actually paid attention to that.
Yeah.
Because that might have been what stopped me from being perfect the last 2 years, albeit winning, but still.
Might have been what stopped you from being perfect. That's pretty lofty aspirations from someone who's mired in the mid-teens.
But you know what I mean. It's like I want to have like. Usually when I go into this, it's like, okay, I'm going in thinking that I'm going to win, but I'm not going to get 100%. I think I can get 100% this year.
I'm pretty sure I got like 11 last time, so I'd be happy to get 15. If I could get 15, I'd be like, this is incremental improvement.
15, you're an expert.
Yeah.
Because if you're above 500, I'll see you soon, Dante. And it's on that triumphant fucking boast that I have gone with the New York Knicks at 42.5 wins, and I've gone push. How do you push half a win?
You can't push. But let's just call it 43 push.
Oh, I was going to call it 42.
Alright, call it 42 push.
How about you? Let's give me both.
Okay, so there's going to be a big asterisk if you win.
So 42, 43 push. I just think this team overperformed last year. The Deep 2 ASMR podcast. How do we do that whilst on Zoom? That's crazy. The Deep 2 ASMR podcast. Sorry, the New York Knicks overperformed last year, and I think like they held opponents to an unrealistically good 3-point shooting, and I just don't think that just regressing back to the mean is going to hurt the Knicks a lot. And also, look, they've got 2 more years of Tibbs. This is when the cracks start to show. Like, we all know what happens to Tibbs teams. I've talked shit about Randall before, but he still is, an all-star level player who played 37.6 minutes a game last year or something along those lines. So, again, the cracks will soon start to show. And I just don't see, like, a leap in RJ Barrett, even though he has had a big leap, and he has shown like that sort of progression to be a 20+ point scorer. And like, look, we just talked shit about Kemba for ages, and he was literally like, the OKC were like, oh, okay, instead of trying to trade him and flip him for assets, let's just like get him out right now because it's not going to work. Like, if there was any glimmer of getting like a 2nd round pick or like young player halfway through the season, they would have just held on to him, but they bought him out. And like, Fournier, like awesome shooter, but when has he ever been on a team that wins more than 42, 43 games? Like, it's just locked themselves into the 8th seed. But no, I think 40, 42, 43 is a beautiful number. What have you gone there, Dante?
I've gone under, and I think they'll be closer. I think they'll be like around like high 30s, like low 40s. But I just think
they'll be a good team.
I think they'll be a fine team. The thing with the 3-point shooting defense is that what that like functionally amounts to is that teams shot like 32% from 3 against them, whereas there's other teams who are allowing like 38, and over the course of a season that's like hundreds of points that they're not conceding on threes because teams are just missing them. And I don't think that we or the NBA cognoscenti as a whole really understand why that is. Some people say that it's luck. Some people are like, well, they know who to leave open, they know who not to leave open. If you've got a whole bunch of like active long defenders on the perimeter, it's going to drive that down. I don't know what the actual reality is. You'd bet on that coming back to the mean, and that was like one of the main reasons why they were so good defensively. So I think it's reasonable to expect that maybe that wouldn't crater. Like, it's not completely luck and they're going to, concede 40% next season, but that it would be like, around league average, which brings your ceiling down. And I think listening to some people, some journos and some people, writing over the off season, they've kind of expressed that the moves that they made were to bring in playmaking rather than just shooting, because they're seeing like, they decided to prioritize keeping Alec Burks over keeping Reggie Bullock, because in the playoffs they were like, Reggie Bullock has nothing to his game other than catch and shoot, so you could just stash Trey.
and have no problem. Trey just needs to contest a three. Whereas if you get playmaking, there's a lot of you basically have to there's nowhere to hide because Alec Burks is going to dribble the ball and try and slash through. That sounds suspiciously like the rhetoric that was used with the fucking Rajon Rondo, Jimmy Butler, Dwayne Wade heat, where it's like no one can shoot, but goddamn, we got playmakers.
Yeah.
Because if you're starting like D Rose, he's improved as a shooter, but he's not by any means like a reliable shooter. And
you're going under and on screens.
Fournier is genuinely a good shooter, but then you've got like RJ Barrett, Randall, and then either Robinson or Noel. That's not a lot of shooting, and yeah, Fournier's okay.
And Tibbs isn't going to play Randall at the 5 as like a playmaker.
Yeah, there's going to be Randall is going to be next to Robinson or Noel the whole time.
But the 80s were fun, man. Like,
there'll be some.
That was the last time Tibbs got laid.
There'll be some. Yeah, fucking preach that. He and his wife have different beds. Nothing against people who actually do that, but it's just a laugh. Just a laugh. I just think...
Hang on, sorry, I just googled it. Thibodeau's never been married.
Well, I mean, New York City, the city that never sleeps.
He was engaged while in graduate school at Salem State, but eventually called it off. Yeah, that seems like, you're breaking up with me? Well, I'm going to break up with you first.
So I reckon there's probably a puff piece somewhere in there that's like he broke it off because of the love of the game.
Sorry, I'm just Googling, has Tibbs ever had sex? There's no answers. But yeah,
I think that the questions they've asked and the theoretical answers that they've found are like good answers. But you're asking me to put faith in like Kemba staying healthy, Fournier being actually like, like
someone who could do something.
Someone who could do something outside of the context of like
16 points.
Yeah, magic, and like, do we believe that Rowan Barrett has another step forward in him? I don't know.
But the thing is, if Rowan does get better, let's say he has that in him and he can be a 25-point scorer, I don't think it's going to happen on this team because every time he drives to the paint, Julius Randle is like at best sitting in the mid-range, and there's going to be Mitchell Robinson there or Noel's man sitting there, and like just I feel bad for the kid because a lot of people have called him a bust, and like he is legit a really good scorer, but he also just like has one of the worst situations.
I don't think he's a really good scorer.
I think he is. He's as in, like, really good isn't like Kevin Durant. I think he's really good. Like, if I saw him at the gym, it's like, he could make a 100.
If you saw him at
Brody,
you saw him at MSAC open run.
He could make 100 shots in a row. Whereas I don't think Kelly Olynyk could make 100 shots in a row. Try making a free throw
before we're making 100 shots in a row. Fucking hell.
Yeah, I think he's. I mean, I'm a little bit higher on him than you, but that was sort of like drilled into me writing for the Knicks wall. I didn't know how high people were on Barrett until I started writing for a Knicks blog. Yeah. Because I just thought it was just consensus that, damn, you missed out on Ja Morant.
As he is now, he's a good player. He's not a second overall pick type player, and I think for this team to like take another step forward and be like an actual serious, like, not contender, but like, serious chance to make the second round, like he needs to be like low 20s on like decent efficiency. Which last year he was like 17, 18 on like, 42%. And so I've seen enough of wings who shoot 42% from the field and 33% from three.
He shot 40% last year from three.
Well,
on 3 attempts.
Yeah. I just need probably a little bit more from him, like going forward, like big picture. But I just think there's, in terms of this team, like hitting the over under, which is like 40,
what we're talking about,
43. I think that there's enough variables in here that I'm down on rather than up on that. I'm like, if 2 out of these 3 additions don't pan out, then this team isn't going to be appreciably better. And as we've talked about, there are some teams which we'll get to later, which are kind of like snapping at the heels to step up to where the Knicks were last season.
Yep.
So,
all right, let's move on to the next team, which is the Toronto Raptors. Their number is set at 36.5 wins. And I've gone under because I see so much downward momentum and I see no upwards momentum. So obviously, if a good deal comes across the table for Pascal Siakam, they're going to take it. If a good deal comes up for Fred VanVleet, they're going to take it. Like, all this stuff's going to happen, and then literally one thing needs to happen for them side to be like, oh, you know what, tank it, Scotty Barnes, 40 minutes a game, Goran Dragic, you just bought out, let's just like Precious Chua, can you be Rudy Gobert? Let's find out. There's just a lot of incentive to tank, and like think about how much stuff would have to go right for this team to be really good and like push for the play-in playoffs. It's a lot. So I think this number's... I can see where this number's set just simply because they have really good players on their team right now. But if you get rid of one of them, it's a little bit like, there aren't many good players right now, but the future's very bright in Toronto.
I'm going over because I think all of that's true, but I think that there's a bit of like...
Yeah, we agree.
I think that there's a bit of like 2013-14 Suns potential here, where it's like you're going in saying like we're ready to pull the plug like at a minute's notice, and there's enough talent and it all kind of like, you know, convalesces in a way that just works. And like 39 wins is not like we're shooting for the fucking stars here. I think this team they'll be, you know, like pushing for the play-in. And I think I'm basing that on saying that I think Siakam will probably be there for the majority of the season. Even if it's just up until the trade deadline. I think that's enough to get them across the board. Like, Scotty Barnes looks good.
Although I said James Harden should be there till the trade deadline last year for the Rockets, and that should be enough to pull him up to 30-something.
You did. Am I right or wrong in saying that Siakam is not as hotly desired as James Harden?
But like, I'm just saying, if Siakam's gone, then everyone's gone.
If Siakam's gone, the organization just like trends downwards and decides to, you know, like shift out of trying to win. But I think there's enough talent. Like, I'm big on OG taking another step forward. Like, I think Siakam hopefully can have like maybe a little bit of a bounce back season. Scotty Barnes looks good. Like, Gary Trent, we know what he is. We've got Fred VanVleet ready to step full time into the point guard role. Like, I think that there's enough talent there to say that maybe they could be 10th in the East, which is not like not like, again, we're shooting for the moon here. We're asking for mid-30s wins from them. Like, you know, there's some fucking pretty shit teams in the East. So, if Siakam gets traded 15 games in, the organization is not going to then say like, let's try and be good. And, you know, it's done. They're going to try and tank to get their own pick as good as they can possibly get. You know, accrue the assets, yada yada. But I think if Siakam was to play even half the season there, and have somewhat of like a bounce back year, I think that the young players and that player stepping into like new roles, ready to succeed, like, you know, like VanVleet, I can see, you know, like high 30s. So I'm going over.
I can't wait 12 months from now for you to listen back on those words you just said.
Yeah, and I'll probably have a sick excuse as well.
Just like I did. So the next team is the Milwaukee Box, and their number is set at 45.5.
Oh, 54.
54.5. And I've gone over. What have you done, Dante?
I've also gone over because I think this, like...
If you extend their games out last season to 82 games, they win 52. And, like... They've just gotten better.
Only 52.
They've just gotten better.
Yeah.
So this would be 3 wins more than last year. They've been together another year. Yes, like Drew and Brook Lopez are getting older, but Chris Middleton's still on the right side of 30. Giannis is obviously Giannis. Like, the only thing giving me a little bit of pause here is that Giannis said at Media Day that his leg's still injured. And it's like, well, you just closed out a few games really well against Phoenix Suns. Still injured. I'm not too worried about it. I think this team's just going to keep gelling. And just, continuity. And they probably want the home court advantage against the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, well, I think that is going to, as we get down to the end of the season, be a big storyline, like who are going to be like the top 2 and in what order. But this is just like the ultimate regular season machine over the last 3 years. We know, you know, like obviously they got over the hump in somewhat unfortunate circumstances for myself. But the narrative has been that this team is like everything in the regular season and then nothing in the playoffs. And a substantial part of that is just their regular season dominance down to like, you know, finely tuned performance art, basically. They all know how to do it. You know that Buddy's going to like play everyone. They're a deep team. You've got DiVincenzo coming back. They're just stacked with like okay role players,
like Grayson Allen, George Hill.
Like there's just guys who are going to step in and perform at the level that you need. And when your 4 or 5 best players is like, you know, Giannis, Drew, Middleton, Bobby Portis. I kid. You know, like you're...
And like the decision to let PJ Tucker walk, to bring in like these more people, which I criticised, you like, but the fact that they've got more people now, which is like... And like Semi Ojeleye, Pat Connaughton, they took a flyer on Rodney Hood. Like, there's heaps of room. Like, if it's like, Drew Holiday's not playing today, don't worry, we've got these people that are going to look awesome next to Giannis.
I like all of these dudes heaps better on the Bucks than I like them, you know, on the Blazers or on the Grizzlies. Like,
Alright, I'm going to edit that and be like, Dante loves Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen is Dante's favourite player.
Is Grayson Allen the new guy that you're going to pin me to?
Yeah, him and Bobby Portis.
Yeah.
Oh, they're the same team.
Bobby Portis,
imagine like
passing of the torch.
A GL and BP
pick
and roll.
You're going to hate to hear what I have to say about the Bulls when we get to them.
Oh, fuck.
Based on you unfairly pinning me with players. But no, I think like the Bucks are for me in the regular season what LeBron is like overall. It's like you're the king until you're displaced.
I think you're forgetting the Utah Jazz. They had a like plus 11-point differential in the regular season last year. Utah Jazz are made. You know the team I picked for the title 2 years ago?
Yeah. I'm familiar with them.
They are made for the regular season, and the Bucks just try and emulate what the Jazz do.
That's a very bold perspective. But I applaud you on it. I'm going over. I think this hand's going to be high 50s, and I don't think it's going to be, you know, particularly, you know, we're not going to be sweating this.
No, not one
We're
bit.
not
Might
going to be
even
sweating
be
this.
a best pick. So the next team is the Indiana Pacers, whose number is set at 42.5. They won 39 games across 82 games last year, right? So to beat last year, they need to win 3 games, and TJ Warren might play basketball. They added depth options with Chris Duarte. Say what you will about drafting a 50-year-old, but like he looks good in the preseason. Isaiah Jackson looks fine. He's probably not going to play. And they got Torrey Craig. They re-upped Torrey, mate. He used to play for Brisbane.
T-Sizzle.
And like if they don't suffer any injuries, like I've written here, like fucking cancer.
Can't really account for that one.
Like that'll be a big plus. And like this team is just fucking. You talk about the Jazz and the Bucks being built to win the regular season. Like the Indiana Pacers are built to be the 4 and 5 seed. The 4 and 5 seed gets more than 42 wins. And there's been a little kind of few murmurs about Ben Simmons. It's like if they get Ben Simmons, they're of course going to go over this number because Ben Simmons is very good at basketball. So like I think to win 3 more games than last year, and I haven't even mentioned the fact that a coach was like an absolute twat. And then they replaced him with not just a regular old Joe. They replaced him with Rick Carlisle, who's one of the best coaches.
Who's also arguably an absolute twat.
Is he?
Well, you know.
Why?
A bit bristly.
Is he?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Notoriously bristly. Like, you know, the reports coming out that like the Luca and Rick relationship is like on the downside, like it's a matter of time. Some players have tuned him out. Remember his beef with Rondo all those years ago?
Yeah,
when like,
and Rondo was in the wrong, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, Rondo was in the wrong, but would a less bristly coach have managed to like incorporate it?
I reckon if you're the nicest guy in the world and you're on track to have the greatest offense in NBA history in Dirk's swan song, and some fucking bloke comes in halfway through the year and just tanks it, I reckon anyone and their dog would be bristly.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
But if there are other cases, I actually didn't know that he was a...
Yeah, he definitely has a rep as like a bit of a bristly...
A hard head.
So am I taking from your...
I'm going...
from your soliloquy that you're going over?
Yeah, I'm going
over.
over.
I'm going over, and I'm going hard over.
Yeah?
I'm bought in. I'm all about this team. You get me, Karis LeVert, hitting a game-winning shot in like 3 weeks' time in the blue and yellow pinstripes in Indiana. Poor, I couldn't even tell you what I'll do with that. I think a healthy team like LeVert. You were talking about chemistry before. You kind of underestimate like how important chemistry is. Like him having had the second half of last season and the off-season training camp to like acquaint to his teammates will be really important. Warren actually coming back and playing basketball,
which is still like 6 weeks away. But
well, I mean, like at least he's going to be
he's
going to be on the court. Like if you're trotting out a lineup that's like Brogdon and LeVert, and then with like wing X, you know, like is it Torrey Craig? Is it Duarte?
And then
One of the
Warren at the
bigs.
small ball four and one of the bigs. Like, I mean, and if you trade Miles Turner, it's not the sort of trade where you're trading him for picks. You're trading him for players. So I have enough faith that whoever they trade him for will be able to, like, you know, maybe it's more wing depth, maybe it's like another playmaking guard.
Did you say Mason Plumlee and PJ Washington?
That's Mason Plumlee. It's a matter of when, not if, he records a triple double.
He did.
He did. No, he did. That's what I'm saying. It was always a matter of when, not if. Don't forget we get the annual like Brogdon bounce the first 10 games of the season.
100%.
First like couple weeks of season when we do our what's good and what's not like early season review.
We should probably record that now. It'll just cut down 10 minutes for
Well, I'm definitely going to be like, whoa, like I know this happens every year, but Malcolm Brogdon looks really fucking good.
Dude, you should draft him in fantasy and then flip him after 10 games.
Yeah, well, I just hope that no one in our fantasy league listens to this podcast, so that I'm giving myself away. But I think that I'm really big on this. I'm big on Levert. Like I'm big on Sabonis and Brogdon. Yeah, I'm doing like a little like flexi motion. And I think Warren coming back is a big deal because he
played well for 8 games. I know, it is a big deal.
He played excellently for 8 games. I think it's a big deal, and yeah, you can't undersell like the difference between having Carlisle and Nate Bjork, and like Carlisle is, you know, probably going to be a Hall of Fame coach when it's all said and done. So.
Yeah. And listening to the sort of like media, for some reason I've been listening to like Indiana Pacers media stuff because I'm like, I'm really excited for this team just to like win games and just be back to like, you know, the world is at an equilibrium when the Indiana Pacers are the 4 and 5 seed, like
4 and 5 seed, but no one's like, yeah, they're gonna make noise.
Even when like Victor Oladipo has an All NBA season, there's no noise. Like,
noise. He
might be singing, but there's no noise.
Yeah.
It's a soundproof room.
Yeah, keep it down, Vic.
And
please.
so apparently Rick Carlisle is wanting to run the offense through Karis LeVert.
Oh, that literally just that. I'm tingling.
And then there was also a report that. So when they played the Wizards in the 72 games last year, it was like game 60 last year. Karis LeVert was back. He was in there and like he had just come back obviously from his cancer and stuff. And then against the Wizards, Russell Westbrook was just running, like getting fouled all the time, was going to the rim and was just like running in transition. And then they went to halftime. Russ had like 20 points or something and like, you know, already a triple double or something crazy. And then they went into the locker room and then Nate Bjorkman was like, all right, let's not change anything. He'll just miss those shots. And they were like wide open layups on the break. And then Karis LeVert said, as soon as I heard that, I checked out for the rest of the season.
Yeah. Well, you definitely know that
TJ checked out before the start of the season.
Well, I was going to say that Ricky Rich isn't going to be taking any of those chances. He's going to actually like come in and coach the team.
Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to talk about the Bulls?
You're gonna not like this, but the Bulls over under is set at 42.5, which would have them in the play-in. I'm going over, and it's not just because you've painted me into a corner with DeMar DeRozan. I think that there's a bit to like here, which is, you know, for listeners who've heard me kind of express extreme Lonzo Ball skepticism for the last 18 months. Might come as something of a shock, but I think this is just like a accumulation of parts. There's just like enough top level guys or like, you know, second level guys with like good role players, like kind of what we're talking about with the Bucks, where it's like there's some really good guys and there's just heaps of dudes who are good at some things and like will fit in. Like your role players, it's like Alex Caruso, Kobe White, Derek Jones, you know, like they're good dudes. Troy Brown's on this team, like, you know, even outside of like the guys.
Alize Johnson.
Yeah, Alize Johnson, everyone's favorite.
Blue, you know, drink.
there's top level talent with Levine and Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan. You know, guys like Caruso and Lonzo will provide like some good perimeter D, and like, you know, in the case of Lonzo, like hopefully hit some shots. I just think that there's enough here. I think Billy Donovan's a competent coach, and I think that the last time he had like a bit of a island of misfit parts roster was in OKC that year that I mentioned before, with, you know, like the 3 guard lineups and the surprising playoff run. So I think that I'm just confident that they'll be able to. And again, like what I was talking about before with the Raptors, like we're asking them for 43 wins. You've got
3 dudes who've made all-star appearances, and you've got a whole bunch of other dudes who are either like solid mid-career vets or like, you know, Patrick Williams, like young with potential, could take a big jump forward. 43 wins. Yes, the East is going to be good, but it's not heaps to ask. So I'm not by any means thinking that this team's going to like high 40s, like, you know, in the playoffs. But I think that like solidly in the play-in, like, you know, a little bit above 500 is probably where they're at.
Yep. So I've also hit the over.
I'm shocked. I thought you were going to be pessimistic.
No, like I gave him a D plus or whatever it was for the off-season grades, because I don't think this is what you should do with a basketball team. Not that they're not going to win games. I think they shouldn't have paid DeRozan $75 million and given up Thaddeus Young and a fucking first-round pick. I think they did too much to get where they are, but they still brought in players. Like, they still brought in DeRozan, they still brought in Lonzo, and like, $20 million. They still brought in Caruso, which is a fine contract. But like, everything they did, I don't like the future. But in terms of just like winning 43 games, I think they did a great job at winning 43 games. And adjusted last season, they would have won 37 games in an 82-game season. And that was with 58 games from Zach LaVine. Because if you remember at the end, right after they brought in Vooch, like Zach LaVine played a handful of games and then missed 11 straight or something while out with the health and safety.
And they struggled.
And they struggled, and that really pushed them out of the play-in. Chestnut checkers. And yeah, it's just like... I hit the over, and then yesterday I was watching the Cavs versus Bulls in the preseason, where the Bulls won. They were up by 40 points, and like, yes, it's the Cavs, but like, they just had heaps of fun, and it looked really good. And I was like, holy shit, Patrick Williams isn't even playing.
That's 9.8 points per game, Patrick Williams, for you.
So he's out for 6 to 8 weeks, which is a little bit concerning for someone who has quite a few Patrick Williams trading cards, but that's all right. Look, if I've written here that if they had kept the exact same team together and not brought in Lonzo and DeMar DeRozan, I'd probably still hit the over, because Zach LaVine's really good, and they were going to hit the over if Zach LaVine had just played basketball down the end of the season. So like, I think this is a really easily set number, hit the over as well.
I'm shocked for what it's worth. I thought you were going to be like a hard under.
They're not bad. They just gave up too much.
No, I understand.
They gave up too much to win 43 games.
You're offering a very nuanced take, which is what listeners of the Deep 2 have come to expect from you. So.
But you get what I mean, right?
No, I know what you mean, 100%.
Oh, don't like that tone, Dante. Let's move on to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have been struggling since losing LeBron James in free agency a few years ago, after losing to the Golden State Warriors in the finals many years in a row. So their number for this upcoming season is set at 26.5, which is very little, and I have gone under. What have you done, Dante?
I've gone under plus you're stinky. This game is pretty sad now. They're not good. They haven't been good.
Well said.
There's no clear path for them to get good, because they're 3 main additions from last season, not including Jarrett Allen, who played a few games for them. It's Larry Markkinen on a big, fat, juicy contract. Rick Rubio, friend of the pod, and Evan Mobley, who we'll figure it out. We'll see. I'm not gonna get on a platform and start talking about what I know Evan Mobley is gonna be like.
Watching the preseason, I feel bad for him.
Yeah,
that's all I'm saying.
Rick Rubio's presence tells me that Sexton's getting traded at some point.
No.
Colin Sexton is going to get traded to the Spurs, and he's going to turn into like
this is not the right podcast.
He's going to get turned into like a 34 point per game scorer, and Pop's going to be like, I finally found my guy to like replace Kawhi. That's what's going to happen. Rick Rubio is the exact kind of player who can mentor the 2 young guards, but he's also the exact kind of player who can step in and
win 32 games.
Well, replace one of them, not but he can do it.
You've been watching too much FIBA. I don't think he's got that anymore.
Well,
I think he's a backup point guard.
In theory.
Do you remember Andre Miller?
Who's that?
The small dude who
the king of the lob.
Yeah, somehow 7th in the whole entire world in assists of all time. Late in his career, just coming off the bench for just any team that would just pay him $2 million.
Yeah.
This is Ricky Rubio now.
Could be, but I think that's maybe harsh.
But I think that's harsh. Rubio's much more attractive.
And maybe that is closer to the reality, but does Kobe Altman, the GM, know that that's closer to the reality? I don't think he knows much. Maybe he's thinking, the way that I just described, he's ready to step in. Sexton's name has been floated in trade discussions. He's extension eligible this season. They're either going to have to pay him
or they're going to have to trade him. And, you know, I don't know that they're going to want to pay him. So the other, you know, then you scan the roster and it's like Isaac Okoro is another one of these dudes who it's like, like, you know, you've got my number, call me when you can hit 40% of your shots, period. Markkanen, like, you know, maybe he has a resurgence, but probably not. Kevin Love, like, what are we really doing? I think this team is going to be bad and in contention for the number 1 overall pick.
Well, at least they're in contention for something. Yeah, I've also gone under. And so adjusted for last season, they won 25 games, which is only a game and a half under this number. And that had a strong start. They were like 7-3 at one point last year. And it's like, oh, Andre Drummond is finally a rotation big man. It's like, nah. And like Colin Sexton had that really hot start. He scored 42 points against Kyrie Irving in that Brooklyn duel where he kicked the ball and it was a no call and then got the final possession. But like I might have actually gone over if they hadn't swapped Larry Nance for Larry Markkanen.
Okay, so you think it's close?
I think yeah. It's like 25, 24.
Larry Nance is definitely a better player than Markkanen.
But I think when it comes down to it, you've got all these shit teams, OKC, Detroit, the Cavs, and then Detroit and OKC are like bad. Let's get another Cade Cunningham and another Josh Giddey. Like they really want to be bad. The Cavs just have no excuse. Like they've tried doing that, and they've even said that they want to make the playoffs for the last 2 years. And it's like now they have to keep playing. And like even if they tank it, you're not resting Evan Mobley, and you're like, are you going to rest like Jared Allen? Like that's just sad, man. Like just paid him $100 million to rest him. Like you can't do that. And like I've got 3 ways that they go over. So because I think it's close, either Sexton becomes elite, Garland becomes elite, or Jared Allen becomes elite. And it's probably 2 of those 3 things have to happen.
Yeah.
I think.
We mean Sexton becomes elite.
Sorry, man. Let's move on to the Detroit Pistons, whose number is set a game under the Cavs. They're at 25.5 wins. I've gone under for most of the reasons I've just mentioned because they've got a lot of downward potential and they're going to want to lose games right at the end of the year. Cade Cunningham is fucking resting preseason games. Like I can't wait to see what he does in game 60 next year. And also like the biggest stealth tank of all time, Killian Hayes, will be handling the ball. It's like that is the cunningest. Is that a word? Cade Cunningest. That is the cunningest tank job that you can ever do. Just put Killian Hayes on the ball and say,
don't tell that to Kevin O'Connor.
Developmental minutes.
Yeah. I've gone under as well. I think it's reasonable that we'll see Cade at least take some lumps early in the season as he adjusts, to being a big wing ball handler, which is arguably like the rarest thing to be good at in the NBA is to be that size and have that responsibility offensively. So I think it's likely that we'll see him take some lumps. Killian Hayes, don't tell KOC, but hasn't been good. That means a healthy dose of Jeremy Grant playmaking, scoring, which we know he can be okay at, even good at, but not good at in a way that's going to elevate anyone and let alone the team.
I really like Sadiq Bey and Sabin Lee, but that's not doing it for me with the 25.
No, and then we're looking at some nice young role players. But what are we really talking about here? I think this is going to be another team that's going to be at the bottom of the conference.
Mm-hmm. We were over the moon when we first heard that the NBA was going to be televised on Australian free-to-air TV in the 2019-20 season. It didn't exactly go swimmingly with the nasty cough halting the season and games getting cancelled left, right and centre, but it was a huge step and an exciting one for basketball fans all across the country.
Better yet, it wasn't a commercial channel cashing in on some basketball nerds like us. It was SBS, one of our public broadcasters. Unfortunately, the NBA wasn't the only thing SBS was pushing last season. They also ran advertisements from Sportsbet, Ladbrokes, Bet365, BetEasy, and Neds, some of the biggest sports betting companies in Australia.
In a one step forwards, 2 steps backwards move, SBS has dropped the ball here. As a public broadcaster, SBS plays a key role in providing relevant, culturally appropriate health information to local communities. The last thing SBS should be doing is offering a platform for gambling companies during the most financially unstable time in recent memory.
This past year, men aged 18 to 24 made up 79% of new gambling account holders, with increased median spending and frequency of bets. This is the last thing we should be spending our money on given the financial uncertainty that comes with the pandemic. During COVID lockdowns, wagering companies spent more money on advertising and incentives to gamble, and it worked. SBS needs to hear from viewers that gambling ad revenue isn't worth the harm it causes. Call on the SBS chair, George Savitas, to put community health ahead of gambling revenue by signing the petition at www.endgamblingads.org.au/get-gambling-off-SBS with hyphens in between. All right, so we're going to hit the Miami Heat in the Southeast Division, but before we do that, we're going to take a quick break.
Oh, that's what you meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well,
Did you get it?
Yeah, I got it. Just pick up whenever you're ready.
All right, and we're back with the Miami...
I'll just keep it in, don't even worry.
We're back with the Miami Heat in the Southeast Division, kicking us off down south, the Floridians. They are 48.5 wins, which would have them in the playoffs. Sean, I'm going under.
That was your best podcast voice. Now, Bill. that was perfect, man. See, my best podcast voice is... And welcome back. My name is Sean Carroll, and joining me as always is the one and only Dante Boff, Mr. Boff, my man. Now here we're talking about the Miami Heat.
If you like my podcast voice, you should hear my closing call at Bunnings Brunswick voice, where we had to like tell people to get out of the store like politely, like it's 7:00, get fucked. Good evening, Bunnings Brunswick customers. The time is now 7:00, and we will be closing shortly. Could you please assist us by finalizing your purchases at the front of the store? On behalf of the team, I'd like to thank you for shopping with us tonight and remind you that we open bright and early at 7 a.m. tomorrow.
As if that's not pre-recorded. Well, when I used to work at the pub and I used to do closes at 4 a.m, I would just like, obviously, you know, what the fuck's going on at 2 a.m. at just a pokies pub, and I'll just be sitting there going, this is your captain speaking. We are now cruising at an altitude of 50 metres above sea level, and then I just giggled my way off the old microphone. But the Miami Heat, 48.5. I've gone the over. They arguably had the best off-season of the whole entire league.
Depends on your perspective on PJ Tucker, but...
Even if you think PJ Tucker's fucking... dog breath cafe, it's still a pretty good off season. It's just so Miami just to go over their over-unders, like fucking, I mean, obviously not for Dante, who's clicked the under on the sheet, but like Gabe Vincent and like Max Strus, they're just gonna become the next Trevor Ariza and like these rotation level players, you know, like that's just gonna happen all of a sudden. Oh, this is the next Josh Richardson. They're just gonna have these dudes, and like, what if Bam Adebayo just becomes like a top 3 center in the league, all NBA level? Fucking 50 wins, Dante. That's all it is. 50 wins.
Yeah, I guess. I just have like a gut feel that this is going to be the team that like false starts, that stalls with those other teams, kind of like, you know, like
Jimmy Butler's going to come in overweight. He doesn't work hard enough.
He's got a lucrative coffee business going on the side. His attention's not there. No, I don't think it's a culture or a work ethic or whatever. I just think like Jimmy Butler missed heaps of time last year. Kyle Lowry's 36. Tyler Hero, like maybe we see the third year Jason Tatum jump from him, where it's like great rookie year, average second year, like whoa, third year it all comes together. Maybe Victor Oladipo like gets it back.
I'm not factoring Victor Oladipo at all.
You know, you kind of go down the list and it's like, yeah, you can probably like pencil in Bam for like all-star or like, you know, pseudo all-star like production. Jimmy, you can pen that motherfucker in, no problems. Don't worry about it. But those are the only two things that are kind of like certain. And less so than I think maybe some other teams with really quality role players. I think there are questions about like the rest of the guys. Like Lowry, obviously he was great last year. Will that continue? Oladipo, you're saying you're not even counting him, but Hero, there's questions. You know, you're going down the list. Duncan Robinson, obviously we know what he is, but obviously somewhat a limited player. I don't think that Tucker is a particularly good addition. So I think they're going to be around this number, but just in terms of like mapping it out in my head of like what the playoff order looks like, I think that there's going to be a couple teams that jump above them.
You also didn't mention Duncan Robinson, who's still
I did mention him.
Yeah, that's fair. I just think Miami always goes over. Miami always wins games.
Didn't Miami go under last year?
Yeah, but
just last year.
You know what I mean.
One season ago, arguably like a few months ago, they went under. I'm just saying.
I mean, factually, a few months ago they went under, but like, it's Miami. That's my argument, man.
That's fair.
That's
a fair argument. Well, you're. I'm going to connect the Miami Heat and the Atlanta Hawks because the Atlanta Hawks are 47.5, and I'm going over on the Atlanta Hawks because I think that the Hawks are one of the teams that are going to jump the Heat and kind of cement themselves in that
top 4,
5 kind of like region ahead of the Heat. Yeah.
I've got this as my best bet for the whole entire podcast, both Right and Lefton Conference.
Whoa, that's a lot of teams in the Right and the Lefton Conference.
This is the Atlanta Hawks over is the best number I've seen. So they had 47 wins this past season when extrapolating it out to 82 games, and that was with Lloyd Pierce at the start of the year, with Rondo at the start of the year, and Bogdanovic missing like 15 odd games at the start of the year.
And DeAndre Hunter missing half the season.
Yeah. So like you get a full season without any of those asterisks and handicaps on you. Obviously you've got a better coach. You don't have Rondo. You've got a better upgrade on Rondo as a bench creator in Sweet Lou. And then look, if Bogdan misses at the same time, fine. That's just what you do when you have him. But like, let's say he's healthy. And you've got all this young development for Kevin Huerter, Trey Young, and John Collins. And like Clint Capella still on the right side of 30. Let me just triple check that.
Whoa, Clint Capella, like elite defensive center as well. Like Clint Capella is like a top 3 to 4 defensive center in the league.
Yeah.
In terms of guys,
he's 27. Yeah.
In terms of guys who are playing like like big minutes.
Yeah.
Like someone who's actually starting and playing 30 minutes a game. He's pretty much like near as good as it gets.
Barring a ACL tear to Trey Young, this is a top 4 team, and that's a lock.
This is just like this is the ultimate example of what I've been talking about this whole episode, where you just get like a couple good players and surround them with some really, really good role players, and you have a pretty high floor.
And if Cam Reddish is anything,
well, he's nothing. He's nothing.
He hit 5
Cam Reddish is my Oladipo. I'm not even factoring him in here.
Okay, but
Cam Reddish is being traded for like a heavily protected first, like halfway through the season.
That's something I didn't even write down. They can bundle together a max salary with John Collins, Cam Reddish. It's like, I don't think they should bundle together. Like John Collins is re-signed. We know what John Collins is when he's like able to, his wings aren't clipped. Like he's good. He's good. Bogdanovic, we know what he is. Like he's like the perfect secondary creator. Yeah. And the ace in the deck, all these dudes who we know what they are. Like we know Huerter is a really good role player. We know Lou Williams is going to come in and give you good minutes off the bench. We know what Capella is. The ace in the deck is DeAndre Hunter because he was really fucking good last season. He was really good. He just couldn't stay healthy. So if that's not the case this year and he's on the court, you've got like a big matchup proof wing who not only can shoulder the load defensively, taking the biggest wing threat on the other team, but he's hitting spot up threes, he's flashing some stuff off the dribble. So continue that. Trey Young's really good, as much as it pains me to say. They're almost like failure proof because they've just got so many ways that it can go. Like if you're saying like, well, John Collins underperforms and like Gallo's old and Kevin Huerter stalls out, it's like sick. Well, you've still got like a couple of other role players. You've got a Bogdanovic, you've got a Capella, like Lou Will if he has anything left. Hunter. Even if Lou Will's done, it's like, well, they've got DeLon Wright. Yeah. Like stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just...
Yeah, they're kind of like, I think they're as close to failure proof with that top tier, player in Young. So I'm pretty confident going over with them.
Would you say this is your best pick?
No, my best pick is Indiana.
Maybe
not for both conferences, but definitely for the Brighton conference. I feel strongest about Indiana going over at 42.5.
All right, well, let us know next week if that's your best pick for the whole entire thing. But going on to my second best pick with this next team in the Southeast Conference, we've got the Charlotte Hornets at 38.5 wins, and my second best pick is Charlotte Hornets under. I don't like how this team adjusted to 82 games, won 38 games. And you want them to win half a game more when they had some unsustainable clutch shooting and their major additions were Kelly Oubre Jr. and Mason Plumlee. How do you want this team to get better when they overperformed? So Going off Cleaning the Glass's expected win-loss based off their average win differential, they were a 34-win team. So this isn't a question of half a win now. This is a question of 4.5 wins. And even if LaMelo continues to be amazing, he's the only real young star there. Like, I'm not looking at PJ Washington like, oh, man, him in 2 years. I'm looking at PJ Washington like, awesome, you've got a role player for the next 10 years. The only dude here with the high ceiling that's really going to grow is LaMelo, and I think he's close enough to his ceiling already.
Well, I don't know that you can say that with any confidence, considering
I can't, but
considering that he was Rookie of the Year and was, playing at a level above what anyone, even the biggest LaMelo optimists, expected. But I'm also going under because the dudes that you're relying on just aren't that good. Like, you're relying on PJ Washington and Miles Bridges to be like your big wings. Gordon Hayward, we'll see. Like, I'm pretty confident that he'll be like a 25-5 player, but outside of that, then it's Ball and Rozier. And whilst they're both good players now, there's a lot of improvement elsewhere in the conference, as we've discussed for most of this episode. Like, there's going to be a lot of teams that are pushing up into that like low 40s to mid 40s, like play-in playoffs kind of like vibe. I think it's going to be a fat conference in the middle with like lots and lots of teams, and someone has to miss out. Like, there's going to be teams that are like mired in that like middle 30s. There probably won't be many teams that are like terrible, but there'll be teams that miss out on that like middle, bell curve area, and I think that these guys are a prime candidate for that.
It's also a little bit why I gave them a negative off-season rating, because I mean, you could probably do that the season before as well with getting Gordon Hayward. You're sort of locking yourself into just this middle ground, because how do you get your next superstar if you're just going to win 42 to 34 games for the next couple of seasons? Like, there's not much of an out here.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, we'll move on to the Washington Wizards, whose number's set at 34.5, and I've gone with the over. And I said this the episode after the Westbrook trade. I just really like their flexibility, and I really like their just potential to either make a move or just have a lot of tools just to fit around Russ. And I really like Spencer Dinwiddie. I know you're less high on Spencer Dinwiddie, and that's completely fair because neither of us have seen him play basketball for a year. And you do have questions about how people come back, and I'm putting a lot of stock in the fact that people have come back from ACL and major injuries and looked even better than they have in the past, which is like, maybe that's my own fault there. But I'm assuming Dinwiddie is going to be good at basketball, and Bradley Beal's obviously one of the best scorers in the league. And it's looking like if Bradley Beal does want a trade, it's looking like he's going to lock up that Supermax and then ask for a trade. So let's say you've got a full entire year of Bradley Beal on the Washington Wizards. You've got a year of a 30-point scorer on the team, which is obviously going to help you win games. And also the fact they've got Daniel Gafford. I could put a full stop at the end of that, but instead there's
Big Dan.
But you've got Big Dan.
Big Dan and certain things like that.
You've got Thomas Bryant and Montrezl Harrell. They are three, starting to first big off the bench.
Thomas Bryant, low-key, 2 years ago, was like the best offensive center in the league through 20 games. Like, no cap, as the kids say.
And like, you could trade either one of those three for positive value. And if a trade does happen and they try and upgrade elsewhere on the roster, like maybe work on that Raul Neto spot, you've just got, positive value elsewhere in the roster, and the roster just looks a little bit better. And 34.5 is not many wins. Like, I think this team is definitely in the playing conversation, and at a best case scenario, the 5 or 6 seed. And like 34, not many games to win with the team with Bradley Beal and good players around him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that checks out, but the last 2 seasons they've been around the same kind of stratosphere of like low 30s. I'm going under because I think Bradley Beal is getting traded.
Okay.
Yes, I think he's going to take the Supermax, but you get traded, your bird rights go with you. So if he gets traded to the Nuggets mid-season, the Nuggets can then offer him the Supermax when he's eligible. So the only reason why he would delay a trade until he's after he's signed the Supermax would be that he's worried about getting injured, and if he gets hurt, then he's not going to get offered it. But you're looking at it and saying like he's more likely to get injured elsewhere than he is in Washington. Mm-hmm. So I'm going under purely off of the fact that this team without a full season of Bradley Beal is not...
Obviously. Yeah.
This is a lot of like... you got like an alpha, you got like a beta. What's like the C version of like a beta? Like,
Cuck?
got a lot of cucks on this team.
Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie. There you go.
You got the Charlie team.
You got a lot of Charlies on this team. You know, like Dinwiddie, I think is comfortable to say that he's probably a beta if he comes back in his own. I mean that in a complimentary way. Like he's a high level supporting player.
He's not hanging out with Charlie.
Yeah, he's not hanging out with Charlie. No way. But everybody else is a Charlie and is completely ecosystem dependent. And the ecosystem is Bradley Beal. Like that's where the conversation starts and that's where the conversation ends. And if you don't have him for the whole season to like, you know, lift you up, then I think that there's not enough talent here to really do, you know, barring, you know, like Rui turning into like a 25 point per game scorer. Yeah. I don't think that there's enough upside here for any of the guys to project.
I agree with you. I just think Bradley Beal's staying because everything he said is, I want to be here. I want to be the guy on the one team.
But what if? Yeah, I guess. And then if it goes badly through 30 games,
yeah.
And someone comes in and you know, Tommy Shepard comes to Bradley Beal and says like, look, Brad, like I know we're 9-21. Denver's come in with this offer. We think it's fair. Just want to like ask you like if you want to go, because that's how the conversation would go. They wouldn't be like, yeah, we're hitting a check. They'd be like, if you wanted to go, like we think this is fair value for you. Like the choice is yours. And yes, he said everything.
Yeah.
Wants to stay, but like if it's going poorly and the offer's there on the table, who knows what he does? It's a moot point if they start 21-9 because it's a bunch of like decent role players with you know, and he proves himself to be like a true superstar. Then it's a completely moot point, and I will be wrong. But I just think at some point he's gone.
Is it weird that a smile came to my face when you said I will be wrong?
I thought we had like a real supportive dynamic going on here, rather than like wanting to see each other fail.
I think if you're 9-21, and in my world Bradley Beal stays because he wants to be there, this team's going to be pushing for wins the whole entire season, and like there's always those late pushes because as soon as you get to the second half of the season, you know, Cade Cunningham's not playing, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's not playing, and all of a sudden those winnable games become just instant wins.
Yeah.
So like they're going to definitely make a push as long as Bradley Beal's on the roster, and I think he's going to be on the roster.
Okay, that's fair. Well,
if he gets traded, I'm definitely under. Final team, you want to intro?
We'll close it out with the Magic. So they're set.
All our listeners just turned off.
They're set at 22.5 wins, which is not a lot, and even considering that, my pick for the Magic is, with the first pick in the 2022 NBA draft, the Orlando Magic select, because I think that this team is going to be the worst team in the league by a considerable margin, and I would be pretty fucking shocked if they were, you know, if they got to 20, let alone 22.5, 23, like, if this team hits the 2 at the start of the number, then they've done very well.
Yeah, 22 is a little bit optimistic. My first thing I've written here is this is probably the worst team in the league, so I completely agree with you. I haven't been impressed with Jalen Suggs in the preseason so far, which is like, yes, it's preseason. Yes, he's only like a young dude and he's a rookie and he's supposed to be bad, but it's not like, oh, Luka Doncic, 16 points a game in his rookie year. It's like, yeah, nah, this is a rookie. What do you get from Markelle Fultz? Doesn't matter. Doesn't pull you up that much. John Isaac isn't starting at the start of the season. Like, he's not playing. He's still injured.
Probably because they want to like... He's not starting or he's not playing?
He's not playing.
Well, I mean, that's fucking terrifying.
Because he's still injured. And like, yeah, who's going to win out of Mo Bamba and Wendell Carter Jr.? Because if you win, you get a contract. But it's not like you need to be an all-star. You just need to beat this other shit dude on your roster.
Yeah, I've just put up the Orlando Magic Daily fan-sided blog, and the headline from 4 weeks to go is that Jonathan Isaac's return to the Magic will come in stages. Is it like stage 1 not playing in the preseason and then stage 2 like playing from the first game? Because if it is, then I'm in. If it's not, then I'm out.
It starts with T and rhymes with wank.
Yeah. Very eloquently described. Yeah, this team's just like suffered. This is the worst team in the league from like a talent perspective. There's just like a whole bunch of like not that good players, and even the players who you're like high on, a Fultz, a Bamba, like Cole Anthony, Wendell Carter Jr. Like these are dudes who have who've left you with more questions than answers through between 2 and 4 years in the league.
Yeah.
I'm a big Fultz believer with my heart.
Yeah.
Not necessarily with my head. I want him to do really well. And like when he was playing well last season, I was like reveling in it.
Yeah.
But he's coming back from an ACL as well. How's it going to fit with Cole Anthony? Cole Anthony and Suggs alongside Fultz. Like, yeah, I think there's a lot of room for questions here. And then the rest of them is all young dudes who've proven nothing and given you no real indication that that they are like where they that you can just like pencil them in and say like, yeah, this player is going to be like really really good. So I think like hit the under, and like I said at the top, I'd be really shocked if they got 20 wins.
Nate Duncan put it really well when he's doing his season previews with, I'm just trying to pull it up with who he was with. He was with Keith Smith talking about the Orlando Magic, and he goes, you've got Wendell Carter Jr. and Mo Bamba, and they're fighting to stay in the league, and the best center on the roster is Robin Lopez.
Yeah. Yeah, fucking hell.
Yeah.
Will we see a resurgence of the Robin Lopez hook shot?
No, we'll see him traded halfway through the season.
Don't tune in to find out.
What did the Nuggets trade for JaVale? Like a second round pick for the Cavs? This is exactly what you'll see.
That's in the weeds. I don't know.
Oh, I'm telling you.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for today's episode.
That's it. That's everything from us for today. We'll be back with the Lefton/Western Conference next week. But before we go, I just wanted to drop a quick shout out for friend of the pod and member of the Commonwealth Connection, Will Conkin, over in Canada, has started his own basketball podcast called the Down Low NBA Podcast, alongside his co-host Don Yang. And early returns are very promising. They've found their niche pretty early. So jump on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and give those guys a listen and a subscribe. I know that it would be much appreciated, and it's quite a good listen.
Dante, I'll speak to you next week.
Thanks, Sean.